What weaknesses does Lokesh have?
I think he knows more of my weaknesses than I of his. I imagine he abused Yasubai. According to him, his wife had died long before we met him. Yasubai never spoke of her mother, and I never thought to ask. As far as I know, he has no family left, no posterity, unless he took another wife over the years. He craves power. That could be a weakness.
Does he crave money? Could we offer to buy Ren's freedom?
No. He uses money only as a means to get more power. He couldn't care less about jewels or gold. He might say differently, but I wouldn't trust him. He's an ambitious man, Kelsey.
Do we know anything about the other pieces of the amulet? Like where he got them from?
The only thing I know about the amulet is what my parents told us. They said that the amulet pieces were carried by 5 warlords and were handed down over the centuries. My mother's family had one piece, and my father's family had another. That's how Ren and I each got one. The one you wear was mother's, and Kadam wears father's. I have no idea how Lokesh acquired the other 3 pieces. I'd never heard of any other amulet pieces until Lokesh mentioned them. Ren and I wore our pieces under our clothing as carefully protected family heirlooms.
Maybe Lokesh found a list of the families who had been entrusted with them, I pondered.
Maybe, but I've never heard of such a list.
Did your parents know the amulets were powerful?
No. Not until we were changed to tigers.
You didn't have an ancestor who lived a long time like Mr. Kadam?
No. Our family was prolific on both sides. There was always a young king to pass the amulet to, and in our family tradition was to pass on the amulet when the boy turned 18. Our ancestors had longer lives than normal, but the lifespan then was considerably shorter than it is today.
Unfortunately, none of this information gives us an inkling as to any of Lokesh's weaknesses.
Perhaps it does.
How so? I asked.
He craves power above all else. Since he is pursuing the amulet pieces at all costs, then that is his weakness.
What do you mean?
We just saw the scarf create a replica when I assumed Mr. Kadam's form. If he takes the replica version, he'll think that he's won.
But we don't know if the replica can be removed from the person or not. Even if it could be, we don't know how long it will last. Kishan shrugged and said,
We'll test it when we get back.
It's a good idea. I stumbled over a rock, and Kishan caught me. He held me for just a moment longer than necessary, smiled, and brushed the hair out of my face.
We're almost there. Can you keep going, or do you need to rest?
He asked intently. I can keep going. He released me and took the backpack from my shoulders. Kishan, I just want to say thank you for everything you did in Shangri-La. I wouldn't have made it without you. He threw the backpack over one shoulder and stopped, considering me for a minute.
You didn't think I'd let you go alone, did you?
No, but I'm grateful that I had you with me.
Grateful is all I'm going to get, isn't it?
What else were you hoping for?
Adoration, devotion, affection, infatuation, or plain just finding me irresistible?
Sorry, Don Juan, you'll have to live with my undying gratitude. He sighed dramatically.
I guess that's as good place to start as any. How about we call it even? I never actually thanked you for convincing me to come home. I've found a lot of things about being home that I like.
I smiled at him. It's a deal. He put his arm across my shoulders, and we continued our hike.
I wonder if we'll come across that old bear again,
Kishan mused. If so, I should be able to keep him away this time. I didn't think to use my power when we first ran into him. Apparently, I'm not much of a warrior.
You fought the birds really well, he grinned. I'd ride into battle with you any time. Let me tell you about the time I left my sword at home.
He kissed my forehead and remembered happier times. At dusk, we could see a small fire in the distance at the base of the mountain. Kishan assured me that it was Mr. Kadam's camp. He said he could smell him on the breeze. He held my hand the last half-mile because he said he could see better in the dark than I could. But I suspected that wasn't the only reason. When we got closer, I could just make out Mr. Kadam's shadow inside the tent. I approached the tent and said, "Knock, knock. Any room in there for a couple of wandering strangers?" The shadow moved, and the tent zipper slid down.
"Miss Kelsey! Kishan!"
Mr. Kadam stepped outside and grabbed me in a big hug. Then he turned to clap Kishan on the back.
"You must be freezing. Come inside, I'll make some hot tea. Let me just get a kettle to put on the fire."
"Mr. Kadam, you don't have to do that. We have the golden fruit, remember?"
"Ah, yes, I forgot."
"And we have something else, too." I took the amethyst-colored scarf from around my neck, which caused it to shift to turquoise. "Soft cushions, please. And could you make the tent just a bit larger?" I asked. The turquoise threads immediately shifted and stretched. Several of them wove large cushions of various colors, and another piece broke off and began looping through the end of the tent. A few moments later, we were able to sit comfortably on large cushions in a tent that had doubled in size. Mr. Kadam quietly watched the busy threads in fascination. I struggled briefly to get out of my coat. Kishan helped and stroked my arm. I shoved his hand away, but Kishan only grinned and reclined on the cushions. Mr. Kadam asked,
"Does it work like the golden fruit except it creates woven things?"
I shot Kishan a warning look and replied, "Sort of, yeah." Mr. Kadam mumbled,
"India's masses shall be robed."
"Huh. I guess we could clothe India's people with this thing. Funny that hadn't occurred to me before. Wait a minute. Didn't the prophecy say something about chief's disguise too?" Mr. Kadam rummaged through some papers and found a copy of the prophecy.
"Yes, it says here, discus routes and chief's disguise can stave off those who would pursue. Is that what you're referring to?"
I laughed. "Yep, that makes sense then. You see, the divine scarf can do a couple of other things too. I mean, other than making clothes and weaving things. It can gather the winds like the god Fujin's bag," Mr. Kadam exclaimed.
"Similar to the bag of winds Odysseus received from Aeolus? Ulysses' leather bag tied with a silver cord?"
"Yes, but it's not leather. Silver cord would work, though."
"Perhaps sent by one of the gods of wind? Vayu? Striborg? Njord? Pazuzu?"
"Don't forget Boreas and Zephyrus," Kishan interrupted.
"Could you two speak English, please?"
Mr. Kadam laughed.
"Sorry, I got carried away for a minute."
"Do you want to show him now, Kishan?" I asked.
"Sure."
Mr. Kadam leaned forward.
"Show me what, Miss Kelsey?"
"You'll see. Just watch." Kishan took the divine scarf, mumbled,
"Disguise,"
and twisted it around his body. It lengthened and turned black with swirling colors.
"I want to see if it will work without me saying a name out loud like the golden fruit does,"
he said from beneath the folds of the fabric. "Yes, that's a good idea," I responded. When Kishan took the scarf away from his face, I was unprepared for what I'd see. It was Ren. He'd taken Ren's form. He must have seen my stricken face.
"I'm sorry, I didn't want to shock Mr. Kadam by showing him his own face."
"It's okay. Just change back quickly, please." He did, and Mr. Kadam sat there dumbfounded. I couldn't speak. Seeing Ren sitting there, even knowing it was really Kishan, was extremely difficult. I had to tamp down all the emotions that surfaced. Kishan quickly took over for me and explained.
With the scarf, we can take the form of other people. Kelsey changed to look like Nilima, and I became you. We need to test its range and try different forms so we can figure out the scarf's disguise abilities and limitations. Simply amazing,
Mr. Kadam sputtered.
Kishan, may I? Sure.
He tossed the scarf to Mr. Kadam. Its colors changed as soon as his fingers touched the fabric, first turning a brown mustard color, and then changing to olive green. I teased. I think it likes you, Mr. Kadam.
Yes, well, imagine the possibilities. The many people the golden fruit and this glorious fabric could help. So many people suffer from want of food and warm clothes, and not just in India. These are truly divine gifts.
I let him examine the scarf while I had the golden fruit make us some chamomile tea with cream and sugar. Kishan wasn't especially fond of tea, so he got a hot chocolate with cinnamon and whipped cream instead. I asked, "How long were we gone?"
A bit over a week.
I quickly calculated in my mind how many days we were up on the mountain. Good. Our time in Shangri-La didn't count.
How long were you two in Shangri-La, Miss Kelsey?
I'm not sure exactly, but I think it was almost 2 weeks. I looked at Kishan. Is that about right? He nodded silently and sipped his cocoa. Mr. Kadam, how soon can we get going?
We can leave at dawn.
I want to get home as soon as possible. We need to get ready to save Ren.
We can go across the border and enter India from the Sikkim province. It will be much faster than going through the Himalayas again.
How long?
It depends on how fast we can get through the border. If there's no trouble, perhaps a few days.
Okay. We have so much to tell you.